So welcome back to Nightingales, motorcycle restorers, car parts, metal finishers. Today we're going to do a video on petrol tanks, not only motorcycle tanks but car petrol tanks, and show you the problems we have and what we do take in and what we don't take in. We used to take in a lot of motorcycle tanks from dealers away from here and restorers as probably as the last resort. And they'd been around everybody, they'd been to all the dealers, and they said there's nothing they can do, because obviously the next stop is the carburation, even if it's fuel injection. So you're taking it in and you're going to waste your money because it's going to clean the carbs out and be right, the dealer's just going to say sort your tank out. So then we get the ones that have put the DIY kits in of liners, so we have to take them out. So they're another problem we get. And then we get the ones with different types of paintwork. So we'll start off with the first bit, which is petrol tanks that have been painted. Right, so you've got a customer walks in with a usually wrapped in 10 blankets and cuddling it, and he's just got it back fresh from the painters, and he says he's noticed that the tank has got rust inside, or evidence of something inside, and it rattles or something or does something. So on the scale of 1 to 10 of, like, you know, fear, what it is for time to put this right, yeah, we can obviously, but now he's spent probably 400, 500, 600 quid on a spray job and he's done it all backwards. So what you basically say to that customer is, and that's would be to move them on to somebody else, because there's nobody else who'll touch them, I don't think so anyway. Is that it's terminal, it's had it, once thrown in the bin, and that's just bad because you've just spent all that money. So the reason is, if you think of what you've got in it, so let's just say it hasn't got a liner in it and it has the remnants of an old tank of rust, or it's probably got stale fuel in it. So that's the first assessment, but it doesn't matter. Remember, we've got a brand new lacquered tank, now a showpiece. So really you've got to, just to stop the conversation. So then they ask, what can I do? So what you can do is, if you take it back home, because it's the time, you can wrap it in cling film, wrap it and wrap it and wrap it round and round, and you could probably put some chemical inside it to start the flushing process, but it's still not good. It's not good at all, because somewhere along the line it can break through and it's ruined the tank. So it's a risk value for us. So we kind of stop there with it, and that's it, full stop. Now, not only when you're taking a tank into consideration, so we'll have the old wives' tales of everything that you can do, and I've seen it all and heard it all and seen many different versions of it. So the first one is, if it's got rust in it, now we're not only looking at the tank, pre-paint, or if it's ready for paint, if it's some of the Hondas and you come down the tanks, and I'll show you on this one, like this is a Guzzi tank, in which we'll talk about in a bit. It hasn't really got a very thick seam underneath, a clamped seam, and it's flat, so it's better to clean than some of the Japanese tanks, which are double pleated up the back, because where we've got a seam, we've got a V, and we're trying to get it out the V to clean it as well. And this is the conversation what starts at first. I've been told it needs a liner. Well, that's the other thing. Even if the tank had just been all painted and you're prepping for a liner, every single tank's different, and the risk of that tank, so you just say it's gone. So when you come back to that tank and you look at it and you think, well, what would I do? So what you'd probably tell them to do is, if it hasn't had a failed liner in it, you would probably tell them to give it a degrease first with an alkaline solution, a degreaser, and flush it out and dry it out. Then if you've assessed it to see if it's actually still fuel and not just rust, surface rust, that would be the next stage. So I'd let them go away, wash it out, and then come back to me for advice, not me doing it. If it had a liner in it and it's failed, you'd probably send them away because you're playing safe here, and you'd probably say put a solution of acetone in it. But quite a lot, you need quite a lot in it. It's not cheap, so you probably have 30 quid, 40 quid worth of acetone in it, and leave it for 2 or 3 days. Again, all masked off with clean film. And then they'll flush it out, and they'll probably either say it worked or it didn't work. Because there's different types of liners. There's the 2-pack liners. There is liners with a single pack. I'm not giving any names out because I've removed most of them. Mainly because they've been, remember we take more liners, failed liners out than we put in. A liner is the last resort. There's many people putting liners in when they don't need to. It's just back to this assessment. So back to this new tank, what's gone away. We've had some acetone in it. Now if it's still not moved it, then you've got problems. But I did say it was terminal. I did say it had gone, that's it. Now, as soon as you give a glimmer of hope after the terminal diagnosis of this, it changes with people. So now you come from home to workshop using professional chemicals. So in the early days, to take a liner out, I'd use an equivalent to triethylene, which was then got banned, trike. And then it was superseded by methylene chloride, which I've used many, many times. 10% acid into it, into a tank, and then the liner will fall out like a chamois leather rattling from one side. Now, you can't tell people who you've sent away to start using methylene chloride and 10% acid because, they'll probably kill themselves. It's a lethal stuff. It turns your lungs inside out. So they have to go away, but it is a terminal kind of problem you've got. So could I fix it? Yes. But what happens is, could I probably damage a bit of paintwork? Yes. Because even with methylene chloride, the vapour coming out of it gives off the gas, and it can have a 3 metre reaction 3 metres away to a painted surface. It's that strong. So that's where you get you've diagnosed something, it's the wrong way around. So it's assessment first on every tank. So we'll move away from new tanks because I turn them away. I don't take any tanks in now, what have been painted, freshly painted. I don't take any tanks in from away, even if they're ready going for paint. The reason is we've had an horrendous problem over the years with tanks coming in and they've been damaged in the parcel, just throwing them in, and it's an excuse to say my tank's been dented. So we was taking them out the box, we were photographing, sending it to them, my tank wasn't like that, right, I can't get another one. So we stopped it. We've stopped doing all the work for the trade from away, mainly because I'm the kind of the middleman. The guy needs it back in his workshop because he wants to service and get the bill for his carburetors or fuel injection, which correct, that's what the bike's in for. The bike's gone to one side and it's a bit of an abscess while it's in your workshop till you get the tank sorted out. Tank ain't sorted out, no repair. It will fail. When the customer asks the mechanic, go on, just get it going for me, it won't, because it'll just block the carbs up, single carb or many banks of carbs, and the labour's horrendous. So this is the nerve centre, the carburetors are the heart of the machine, so anything coming out of this, that's it stops it. So don't just think if you've rinsed a tank out and you've got a fuel filter, which people think a fuel filter is some kind of magic system to stop all the crap getting into your carburetor systems or fuel injection system. You'll still get, if you still get an orange tint, like a Tango orange kind of look, in the bottom of that paint after your filter, you keep that for a few weeks and your smaller jets will just block and you'll be coughing and missing and you'll be back to square one. So you've got to solve the problem. So that's new tanks and why I don't take them in, because the risk is too high. It's too late, the stage is wrong. So we'll go on to the next project. So we'll take kind of stage 2 of a customer that comes in. A bad paintwork like this tank here, all I've done is really blasted it with walnut, and I've done a pressure test on it, because we do a pressure test on any tanks just to make sure we've got no hidden leaks coming out of anywhere, because that's another story when we've got a leak. Now this one, it's a Motor Guzzi. I'm restoring the full bike of this for the guy, and he made, to be fair with him, he put a liner in this himself, And when he put the liner in himself, I think it's one of the best jobs I've ever seen for a kind of home base to do it. Now, he cleaned it all because, as it says, you either get a kit with a solution of something, and then you get something to either put in singly or a twin pack. This was a single pack. I know the liner, I've taken many out, right? And they do come out with acetone, which is a bad thing if things fall out so quick. So what he did, he brought this tank in for me, did a pressure test, everything good, and I put the camera down it in 2 points. I put it down into the lower and down to the back side here, and he'd made a really good job. He'd done the fatal, he'd made no mistakes, and he hadn't done the fatal mistake, which is a bit more for look, and left it heavily. It wants to be wet film thickness. You're trying to get, I put crosses on tanks and I have a procedure, I shake them in. But then you want to drain out, and you don't want a bit for look, because it's just building up, it's not getting anywhere. So he didn't have things which we have to, I mean, it's not so much on single pack, but on twin pack, what I do to get the bubbles out as well, I put it in an ultrasonic machine in a beaker, and I resonate, and it gets the bubbles to the top, because we don't want air bubbles in. So what he'd done, he'd worked at home with this. He hadn't told me what he was doing, but he did the job. And there was a few things why it could have failed. Now, the liner he'd put in was really well put in, very good. But we put the camera down it, and it hadn't been on the bike yet, and it was failing. I could see rust coming through in different places. So with a single pack liner, he'll have cleaned it all out, done his degreasing. He told me he let it dry out. I mean, we've got reverse machines with the air flowing out the cap, which we put warm air in. You can do it with the not air dryer down the side, and get it warm, because you don't want any substrate shock. When you put your chemical into the metal, it wants to be the same temperature as really your mixture, so you don't get a shock and no bubbles. But this one was a single pack. So he's put it in, assuming he's greased it out. Now, it was on the flats, so it wasn't like it was in the seam. When we get people in who do some of these tricks with nuts and bolts and gravel and all kinds of things, and on the driveway shaking them, and for some reason, I don't know why, but I think because it's acting as a scarifier. But if you think about it, you've got some of the V's in the lower necks, which a bit of gravel ain't going to get in there. So it does work a bit, and there's many people who say, well, I fitted one of them liners a few years ago and I never had any trouble with it. And I probably believe you, because I did as well. And I don't know whether it's just we've got to a stage of products or the quality of it, you know, but there's people who have fitted many successful liners. So what happened is we looked down it, put the camera in it, and it's failed, so we've got to take it out. So I did this with a mixture of two things. I did it with an acetone base to strip it out, rinsed it out, and then we looked at actually what he'd done, what it was like on the substrate underneath it. Now, there was rusting, so the little thing he'll have got in a pot had done something. It'll have been a mild alkaline, which isn't strong enough, right? And I'll get onto that in a minute. So what we've done, I've taken it out and I've cleaned it with an acid, and then I've also added something in it to stop the flash rusting. And it's not just an inhibitor, it's actually an inhibitor in the acid. Because it doesn't matter if you get a little bit of flash rust, but I was trying to see what was underneath it. So basically, when I finish this tank, this doesn't need a liner, and we can save that tank without a liner, because tank liners are the last resort. Remember that all the time. So pressure tested, no leaks, but that's a typical example of someone at home fitting a liner who's fitted it well. They were either that far off from a few little tips and tricks how to fit it, but I don't think it was. I think the particular liner, what come out of this, and I take many out of these, and it's so disappointing for people at home, because you've spent money on the liner, you've probably spent a lot of time, a weekend even, on it, getting it right, and then they fail. And if you're on the road, it'd go into your carburetors and you'd be back to square one. So we'll go on to the next issue. So let's go on to a thick gauge tank, or a car petrol tank. So we'll start with a car petrol. So let's pretend this is a big car petrol tank, because I haven't got one in today. All I'd really have in this is kind of an old sender unit, a simple sender unit, no fancy electronics, nothing. We'd probably have a bit of rusting on the outside. We may have a bit of an underseal type what's failed and it's sweated behind it. Inside it could be rusty, or it could just be stale petrol, modern fuel. So that's easy, because all we do is take the sender unit out, we find the input, put a mixture of acid into it and flush it out, and then we rinse it out, and really we've got it back. And they're easy to do then. Outside we could tidy it up a little bit of blasting, fine blasting, and then the customer could either zinc equivalent or underseal it and put it back in. So petrol tanks of cars aren't a problem, right? It's usually stale fuel. If we've got an hole in it, that's a different thing, but it can still be sorted. So let's just say this was an old British tank, and I do loads of them. Now the gauge of the steel is fantastic, usually. They don't have pleated seams, they come round and they go flat. See many cut them out and get inside and clean them with a wire brush, but most of my customers were into restoration, so we don't do that anyway. And I never like cutting into petrol tanks and doing any tricks with them. So if you've got a British tank, we tend to come in with it, and we do just put an acid into it, and then we'll put a phosphate in it, because we're trying to change it back, that's all, and stop it from flashing over. So the British tanks aren't that really complicated. I mean, a little bit of chemistry on the side of it is, years ago, when you've got an older tank, you tend to go for more acids, depending what it is. If you've recognised it with camera down that it's actually rust or it's still fuel, which gives the impression of like a bit shinier, glazed over your rust. It can be a bit of both. So when you look at what we used to do, they used a product called tetrasodium, GTTA, right, was mixed together, and it was put into tanks as well, Japanese tanks. I used it for years. I still use it sometimes. And what we did, it's very alkaline, so very acidic. You kind of get into the border. So what I used to do with it, I used to put a buffer in it to reduce the pH back down to about 6.57. So we're neutral, so we know we've got no acidity, acidy type effect. So you're keeping away from flashing over with rust. Also very safe at home to use, because you've not got any gases, where one I'm going to show you in a minute gives off hydrogen gas, and this, you don't want this. So when you've got the domestic type of person playing with it, you have to play safe. You can soon gas yourself out in a garage. So, you know, tetrasodium, we reduced it down with a buffer. When I say a buffer, we had citric acid, and citric acid reduces the pH back, so we balance it back with some test papers, and it's like making your own tank cleaner. And it works, because you've got a safe product in workshop. While we're working in other sides of the workshop, we're not got gas everywhere or coming off or anything nasty. So the only thing you add to it then is just to release the rust from the from actually the substrate. So we've got tetrasodium, we've narrowed it down with a bit of citric acid, so then we put a wetting agent into it, and really that's washing up liquid, like your fairy liquids equivalent, you know, just a bit of washing up liquid, just to put a wetting agent, just to break it away a little bit. So that's a popular one as a play safe. Now, where that's used sometimes, or the equivalent on that chemistry for us, myself, is that when you get into some Italian tanks, like I've got one here at the moment coming, which the paintwork isn't very good, he's going to put it back on the road, and what I've decided to do with this, it's got electronics in from the sender unit coming up on wires inside tanks, and it's also got rubber tubes inside. So what I've done with this particular machine is I've put it onto electrolysis with a mixture of our own chemical we've mixed up, and that's bubbling away now, if you just want to have a look. So the reason I'm doing this tank with electrolysis for the first stages, I know I've got no acids in. I know I've still got a sending unit in it, and it isn't going to upset it because I've got quite a neutral. So doing it with electrolysis through a voltage, it's the first stage of cleaning it out, and it was only mild rust, but it's a sending unit and there's pipes in there and clips and all kinds of other things. So it's all about assessment when somebody comes in. You know, that'll be 2 days. If I assess it and it hasn't worked properly, it'll have done 95% of the job, and then I'll add something else to it. If I went straight into that with a phosphoric acid, and I've got phosphoric acids that I can use on stainless steel, aluminium without any damage. And I've got phosphoric acids with inhibitors in it as well, so when we do an acid wash, but because this has got some sender unit and wires in it and it's not that bad, I'm going down electrolysis and then moving on to a little bit of sodium bicarbonate in it for the first stage of that tank. So that's another way we're doing tanks. I've also pressure tested it when it came in and there's no leaks in it. So we'll move on to the next item. So a little bit on the metals really, when you look at anything we do on different tanks as they're assessed, is the steel automatically has iron chloride on it, which when it's reacted with oxygen, it turns to iron oxide. So your biggest problem is you create Fe2O3, which rust, that's what it is, that's the chemical name for it. So what we do is we put a weak form of phosphate acid into that, and then that chants the iron chloride back to iron phosphate, and it always looks like a bit of dark grey or black. So when people say acids, you have to just reverse the process a bit, and you just reverse it and it's ready. It looks good inside, and you don't usually get any flash rust then. So the next thing we'll move on to is fiberglass tanks, and the fiberglass tanks are what we actually do when they come into the shop, if we're going to actually do one. So we'll go on to fiberglass tanks now. So fiberglass tanks, when we come back to any fiberglass tank, again, this is one of our own, it's off of Merlin. It's been in a crate for 22 years, and when we got it in, the full resin outer body had fallen on the floor of the unit, and we saw it exposed to fiberglass matting. But I'll tell you what we did for this. This was a bit of a reverse process. When especially on Fantic tanks, when you get your blistering on fiberglass tanks, it's usually your outer resin, which are missing the adhesion now of your fiberglass matting. So when a lot of people are, I say painters, fill them with some filler, blow it over for you, and you might find a couple of months later it started bubbling again. There is a reason for it. Even if you fitted a liner yourself or you've had someone fit it, it can be because there's another stage you have to do in here to prevent this. So what I did, this was hanging out, totally gone. It was however, it was still good inside. We did a light pressure test on it, we had no leaks. On the fiberglass tanks, we tend to get them on the seams, especially on the Fantic seat. It's not a problem, but you've got to take it back. So what I did with this one, I used a 2-pack tank liner, but reversed it. So I hung it up, got it to one side, and we poured it down it, and we let it go into a drip tray, and we let the resin foam down it and reshape the tank itself. Then we've sanded it back and primed it a few times. So this was non-existent, and now it's rock solid. It's a tank again. It's totally solid. It isn't leaking. Then we've primed it, and we're actually going to paint that in here. But this is where you say it had actually gone complete, because it's a tank we can't get hold of. Impossible. So we've had to repair it. So just a few things we do on fiberglass tanks when we get them in. So you've got the circle here, or the welting, or you've got some exposed, you've taken off the top resin, and you've got your fiberglass matting. So the first thing we do, remember we use the same lining on all these metal or fiberglass tanks. So we'll wash the tank out for at least 48 hours, leaving it with neutral detergent, washing up liquid, right? Because we've got no alkaline, we don't want a degreaser in it. Though some of the places give you a degreaser, stay away from degreaser. So let it go in, and if we see any wet spots or anything, it's good, it doesn't matter, especially if you've got these bubbles or you've got your membrane. So if it's severe like this was, what we do then is we get syringes and we put a bit of washing up liquid again, because it's neutral detergent, and we inject it sideways into all the membrane of the fiberglass. The reason we're doing this is when we're washing it out on the inside, this packing in between the membrane has still got stagnant fuel in it, and it's greasy. So when you put a liner to the outside to repair it, your last resin shine, and inside, that's where you get it sweating. So you're trying to get it done. Then the next move we make is we take some of our clear liners like this, and again we'll wash them out in soapy water. We'll lay it on the side onto the exposed fiberglass, even if it's an hole or it's a full patch. We put some pressure on it, and what we're trying to do is just absorb the last bit of grease out of that mesh of the fiberglass, because any in will cause the problem again. So what we're looking for is a bit of a transfer onto this clean cloth. So if we come in the morning after we've had a bit of weight on it and we're starting to look at some tainting on here, we know we've got it out the fiberglass membrane, right? So that's really the start of the prep for these tanks. And then we'll do the underside. So once we get it to there and we know we've got it all out, we can put the liner then into the inside. A 2-pack liner. We've washed it out with neutral detergent. I'm not so bothered about grease or any alkaline in fiberglass tanks. I'd rather just stick with neutral detergent. Clean it out, dry it out. Again, you can do it with the air dryer. We put in a force of air into here off a 3-motored vac, so it's a constant degree in there going in, and we can leave it all day, you see. And we're trying to get it thoroughly dried out. Now we might go for 3 or 4 days before we'd even think of about 3 hours of stretch to make sure it's dry. If you're in a garage at home, what happens is you go in and especially winter months, you turn your convector heater on and we shoot up to a big temperature, and then you walk out and it goes 6 below or whatever, so you drops fast. So when you're adding your product again, this is why it's so serious. So when we get the products and we mix it, we put it in the ultrasonic tank, we've got the bubbles out of it, we've got a bit of a code where to put it, we're shaking it around, and we know the substrate is clean when this goes. Also, your product we put to the same temperature as the tank, so there's no shock value, even on fiberglass. Works for us, that's the thing. So once you've taken it round, taken it all out, again, any of these things which are on the market at the moment where you can buy on the internet, still a bit suspect, I think, at the moment. I'm taking loads out, loads of different ones, and some of the people who are putting them in are good at it, you know, they spent a lot of time, far too much time on it. So basically that's saying we can do fiberglass tanks. Would I have done this for a customer? No, because it wasn't worth it. The labour I've had in this tank myself has been ridiculous. I've had to reform it, redo everything. I am putting a little liner into it, just a shallow liner in it, because it will be one of our bikes for sale, and the sticker kit cost me 100 quid, so it's going to be in red with a silver sticker, and I'll lacquer it and do it. So that's the next stage of fiberglass tanks. So the question is, do I fit and still do petrol tanks? Yes, I do them. Every tank has to come in for an assessment. None from away, none in the postage, no freshly painted petrol tanks now. It's just too high risk to work on them. You need to be sorting them out before you, if you're doing it yourself, tread carefully at what you're putting in. And then the next question they get asked, the tanks at the end of its days, it needs a liner in. They now say to us, how long can you guarantee it for? Well, you can't, it's impossible. You cannot guarantee it. There's no way. I've had tanks which have lasted for years. I have other tanks which have broke away. You know, there's no answer to it, because the bottom line is, no matter who you do, where you've got different coatings you've had put in them, or, you know, I mean, we've got all the aqua vapor blasting, we can go inside with low pressure, we've got walnut blasting to clean it all out. Every tank's different, so you're not only assessing it for the shape of the tank. If you were on about 400 400s, I know exactly where they go every time. I've silver soldered them on the seams myself. I've taken it out, silver soldered them, taken them down, and then put a liner in them. You get to know each tank, which is the problem. If it's got electronics in it, which a lot of them have, a lot of the newer British stuff, I mean, they'll look through the tank and they'll see the thick rust on it, and it's from a sender unit. It's a mixture of everything, a cocktail of metals, which is creating like a battery. It's not actually the tank, but the unit itself is thick rust. Loads of them I've had, and it's not good really. So I think from there what I'll say is, if you think of the best way to answer the question of a petrol tank is, you just think, if you were at home and you were trying to paper your hallway, right, in your house, but I asked you to do it through your letterbox, right, and it sounds a bit crazy, but when you think, We're trying to put a liner in here to all these places which we can't get into. So you've got to have the right process, so electrolysis, different types of acids, phosphates, sodium bicarbonate. Probably not one product we're using, we're probably using 3 different type products over a period of a week to see what it's actually doing. And the trouble is, once you get a petrol tank like this, which this guzzi's been restored, fully restored in here, if this goes for a paint job, you might be up to £1,000 with the fairing and the side panels and everything, and the tank. And if that has a £400 paint job on it now, and it hadn't been treated, then it's just going to fail, and you've upset yourself with not only the money you've spent, but you might as well get someone like me, they'll tell you to throw it away, which is sad, but it's the wrong way around. So when we're getting into all these bits and all these areas, remember we're putting the cameras in first to have a look and see where it actually is. We might try 25 ml of a product and turn the tank on the jig and just let it assess it here for a couple of days. So there's a lot more to it. That's why I stopped doing petrol tanks for a long time. I've still been doing them for a certain man in the trade. I'm doing them for a few of my customers. But as I say, there's so much involved with it. It ain't just a case of, you know, shaking it round. It's all to do with the shape of the tank, electronics. Your fiberglass ones are a different ball game completely. Your car petrol tanks, to reassure you that if you've got the, I'll just give you an idea. I took out of a car petrol tank equivalent to £2 worth of waste, and all of it, it wasn't rust, it was stale fuel. And that's what you've got to recognise. So, you know, you wouldn't go in with an acid to clean that tank. If you took a scrape and saw what it was, you'd go in with an high alkaline. So there's so many processes. So you can bring a tank in, I'll always have a look. I'll put a camera down for free. I'll do a pressure test for free for you, so you know if we've got any seams leaking. And if you're into restoring, or just generally got your nice bike in corner, you're starting to restore it, if your tank stood there now with a bit of rust in it, or you turn it left to right, which I get many in here, which have usually got the remnants of nuts and bolts or fish gravel in, whereas it's been everywhere before it's come to myself, obviously. And I've had someone's put a liner in it and it's failed. As I say, liners are the last resort. If you are fitting a liner, you need to be in it. I had a deal with one, I'm not saying which company it is. I've drilled it, I've tapped it, I've blocked it, I've even dipped it in methylene chloride. I've bolted it together, and they're evil things, and it works. I've had it in a pure fuel, I've had them in ultrasonic tanks, I've had them in my powder coating dipping tank with ultrasonic pulses, and yeah, the do's dissolve, but I found it to be fantastic. However, if your substrate isn't cleaned back with any of the procedures here, right, back to the old joke with the letterbox wallpaper in your hallway, and you can't get in, it just needs one bit and bang, it fails again. So that's where we're at. The last thing before I go, I'll just say, because we do a bit of on imported motorcycles, the latest trick seems to be that it's ordinary conventional resin, hobby resin, into the top of the tank. There seems to be, and it has happened, they're mixing an ordinary hobby resin and they're putting a bit of silver paint in it, and they pour a bit in this top and they rock the bike a bit, and when you look in, it looks like it's got a fantastic substrate, it looks like brand new. And we do get a lot of bikes in from abroad, and the tanks do look brand new for some strange reason. But then what you find down this part, when you put the camera, we've got like a wave because it's just overlapped. It's not petrol resistant or anything, it's just hobby resin. And it's a few stunts that have been pulled because they look in the tank and they go, the guys who are buying them to sell out again, they go, no, it's fine. Because I know that's such a nerve centre of the bike and part of your restoration. So just a quick tip on that, and I have had a few of them, so I hope that's helped on a few questions. As I say, we do take them in, but we have to tread careful, but we'll always do a free test and a pressure test for you, and hopefully you can have them back like this gent within 2 days, 3 days. So till the next video, thank you.